game of the night. And as I said, double trouble in the bubble. Chris Paul and the Thunder facing elimination against James Harden and the Rockets. And they're going to pick it up in a close game. Fourth quarter, Rockets up a deuce. Harden in the corner. Stepping back. Rockets up 5. Harden would score 32. But then CP3 would take over the game, putting the 3 in CP3. Thunder within 3. Next possession. Paul closely guarded by Robert Covington, but he'll step it back, and he'll let Covington know all about it. 28 points, 7 assists, 7 boards, no turnovers for Chris Paul. Under 15 to go, tied at 100. Paul draws the foul. Chance to give his team the lead. He would make the first. Here comes the second. 13 seconds left. OKC by 2. Will Houston call timeout? No, they won't. Will Houston find Harden? No, they won't. Will Westbrook throw it away? Yes, he will. Russell Westbrook, one of 7 turnovers on the night. Covington not looking. Thunder win, forcing a Game 7. What a performance from CP3.
As far as our team, this is who we are. You know what I mean? We built for stuff like this. A lot of guys on our team been, pushed out, traded or whatnot, but we just stick together and we keep fighting.
We're going to respond. We'll clean up some things, and like I said, we can't play much worse, so we'll play better.
All right, so here's the deal. Chris Paul was the entire show. In the fourth quarter, he outscored Harden and Westbrook by himself. He did it by going 3 for 3 from deep, and again, 0 turnovers, while the Rockets' dynamic duo could make only 3 shots total in the final quarter and turned it over 3 times, including the critical one at the very end. And here's Timmy Legler, who joins us early here this morning. So as I sit back and I look at this, I feel like we spent the entire season before we got to the pandemic sort of cut everything off, talking about small ball, talking about the combination of Westbrook and Harden and all the rest of that. If they go out in round 1, it feels like that could be all over. So what legs is at stake for the Rockets in Game 7?
Well, I don't think, first of all, I don't think there's any question that there's going to be a coaching change. As far as splitting up Russell Westbrook and James Harden, it's easier said than done when you look at what Russell Westbrook makes. So I actually don't think it's as much the small ball to blame if they lose this series as it is their best players have to play better when it matters the most. And when you look at Oklahoma City, Chris Paul controlled that game, and he got them the shots that they needed to get in the moment. When you look at the Houston Rockets and the way they manage those late game possessions, obviously the turnover, the big one late by Russell Westbrook. But the bigger question is, why do you have that situation coming out of a timeout where James Harden isn't handling the basketball coming up the floor? And you end up with Russell Westbrook. He's in a hurry. He doesn't make a great read. I don't know that you want to trust him in that situation regardless. And he kicks it out to a Robert Covington who's 30 feet from the basket. That's what they came up with in that timeout prior to those free throws by Chris Paul. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Russell Westbrook ends up with the ball more than Harden late in the game, and he's a guy that's out of rhythm, that he missed all this time, was struggling in that game. So for me, it's more about getting the shots you need to out of your star players late in the game. Oklahoma City did it. The Houston Rockets did not. And now the question is, do you trust James Harden in a Game 7 to get them through this moment?
At the end of the day, Houston traded Chris Paul to OKC in the Westbrook deal. It would be remarkable if it's the Thunder that wind up knocking them out in 7. Meanwhile, that was the game of the night. Let me get to the performance of the night, and that one clearly belonged to Jimmy Butler. Game 1 against top seed Milwaukee in round 2, and Butler was the entire show. Knocking down the 3 in the third quarter. Heat now down a deuce, and it's Butler again. Chris Middleton playing the defense, sort of. Where's the D? Butler unapproached. Tie game, next Heat possession. Down by 3. It's Butler again. The dive plus the foul. He would score 12 straight points in the third. Heat by 6 going to the fourth. Fourth quarter, 9 minutes and change to go. Bucks down a deuce. Giannis working hard inside. Gets it to go, but hold on. They called him for a walk, a travel on the Greek Freak. Later in the fourth, 5 minutes and change. Bucks down 1. Giannis, oh, that's not close. He was 1 of 4 and 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, it would all be Jimmy Butler. Heat up 3, Heat up 6. Jimmy Butler, next possession, could not be stopped. Jimmy Butler would score 40 points on the night. Third player in Heat history with a 40-point playoff performance. LeBron and D-Wade are the others. And so it is Butler and the Heat that take the Game 1 lead.
I mean, say what you will, but I told my teammates I probably wasn't going to pass the ball. I made a couple shots, and they said, that's fine with me.
We've been here before. Going down 0-1 from Orlando. We did the same thing last year against Boston. Obviously, this year might be different. We might go down 0-2, but at the end of the day, we got to come out and play game 2, man.
So he's right. The Bucks have gone down 1-0 in series quite frequently. But I heard a lot of people in the build-up to this saying that they liked Miami a lot and it was a bad matchup for Milwaukee and that they gave the Heat a really good chance. Through one-game legs, would you assess this, that the Bucks are in some trouble?
There's no question about it. I also was one of those guys that liked the Heat. I picked the Heat to win this series, and primarily because of the way these two teams are going to close games if they're close. And you saw what Jimmy Butler did, and this is what championship teams look like. They have a guy that can go get a shot from anywhere on the floor. And if you look at the way he closed that game, not only did he hit 4 buckets in a row when they needed it, it was 4 different ways. He went left and shot a finesse shot. He shot a pull-up 3. He shot a turnaround jumper in the post, and then he hit a shot going hard right for a pull-up 15-footer on the baseline. So there's no way that you can really, contain him because he's got an answer for whatever the defense calls for. When you contrast that with what the Bucks have to do late in the games, look, it's the same thing that reared its head in an ugly fashion against the Toronto Raptors. As great as Giannis Antetokounmpo is, he is a straight-line dribble guy. And if you take that away from him, he's not going to be very clever with the basketball to escape situations. He is obviously not a guy that you can count on to make mid-range or long-range jump shots over the top of the defense. He struggles with that. He was 4 for 12 from the foul line and missed 2 big ones during that stretch when Jimmy Butler was closing the game. And then Chris Middleton, also a guy that is a good scorer in this league, but he's not someone that could do the kinds of things that Jimmy Butler could do late in the game. So I do think the Milwaukee Bucks are in trouble because I think the Heat are exceptionally well coached. I think these are going to be close games. And in close games, I actually trust not only Jimmy Butler, but Goran Dragic I trust more as a closer, I think, than the Bucks' best 2 players. So they are in some trouble here, and the problem is going to be Miami presenting things defensively that I think Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to have a hard time overcoming in the fourth quarter.
That's another one that if that goes that way, there'll be a lot of conversation that comes out of that in the bubble. Timmy Legler, thank you very much. We'll get back to you a little bit later as the NBA playoffs continue. Now to the NFL, where Bears coach Matt Nagy is backtracking and says he intends to reveal his starting quarterback sometime early next week. This after insinuating over the weekend that he would wait until the season opener against Detroit. But he clarified that last night.
What I meant by that, to keep it real simple, was that there was not going to be a quarterback named this week that we're in right now. We're not hiding anything. I think we're going through right now for us this whole process, and we don't even know that yet, to be quite honest. So we're talking through like those situations and what's best and how to go about it. So we're just really honestly not there yet.
Okay, so a little bit confusing. Let's try and make some sense of it. Here's my football crew this morning: Graziano, Greg McElroy, and Jeff Saturday. And Dan, I will start with you. What are you hearing out of Chicago after a little bit of a back and forth with the coach and himself to discuss whether or not he will name a starting quarterback before the opener?
Well, Greeny, the main issue in Chicago is that no one has separated himself from the other guy in the quarterback competition. So obviously a compressed off season, a shortened training camp in terms of the time they've been able to spend on the field, and not a lot of data from this summer that would help the coaches make an easy decision. So Matt Nagy at this point isn't decided on who he wants to start. And if he is, then he's not as convinced as he hoped he would be. Trubisky's looked good from my understanding in some ways. Foles in some other ways, maybe a little bit more trustworthy with Foles due to the history that he has and the history that so many members of this coaching staff have with him. But Trubisky offers a little bit more in terms of ceiling. I've been told multiple times Trubisky's had a good camp. This is not the first year I've been told that. So the question you have to face if you're Matt Nagy is, do you buy it this time, do you trust it this time, or do you go with the more known quantity?
Well, let's see what Jeff Saturday thinks. What do you buy here? What are you hearing out of there, and what do you think should be going on?
Yeah, Nagy's got to be frustrated. You didn't bring Foles over not to be your starter. So he obviously doesn't like this. And all else being equal, Greeny, Trubisky's got to be your guy. I mean, the truth is, from where you went in the draft, going up to get him with pace, the whole situation, if it's what it is, that's what has to happen on this football team. Here's the biggest issue. If you're a player in the locker room, you already know who the best one is. You just want the coach to go tell the world so nobody has to hide it or slip up in an interview. But the truth is, everybody in that locker room, they understand what's happening on the football field. But all else being equal, you got to go with Trubisky, in my opinion.
Greg, how about you?
Well, I think there's some interesting parallels that we need to acknowledge here. Look, Trubisky's a 26-year-old player, and there's a player that I looked back, and I think he compares somewhat favorably to him, at least in the early part of his career, and that's Alex Smith. Remember Alex Smith in San Francisco? By the way, it took him 6 years to become a productive starter, and the only thing that got him going was the drafting of Colin Kaepernick in 2011. If you look at the numbers, Alex Smith had 51 touchdowns against 53 interceptions. Had under 60% completion rate in his first 5 seasons as a starter. Remember, he missed 2008 because of an injury. But I think Trubisky could have that type of growth. Maybe bringing in Foles lit a fire under Trubisky that we haven't acknowledged yet, and maybe the best is yet to come. But I think we lose sight of who Trubisky could eventually be because of who was drafted behind him. Not all that unlike what happened with Alex Smith, considering the Aaron Rodgers effect that it had and the shadow it cast over his career.
Right, it's a good parallel. I like it. I see the comparison that you're making there. But in this case, they went out and got a guy that, Jeff, you have to believe they went out and got Nick Foles because they believed he would become their starter this season. So if it doesn't go that way, to you, does this feel as though it already hasn't worked out the way the coaching staff wanted it?
Absolutely. Dan made mention of it early. Nagy brings this guy in because this coaching staff has relationships with him. They understand who Foles is. They felt comfortable with him. I guarantee you, they bring him in thinking, hey, this is going to be our guy. Watch when he walks in the room. Watch when he gets on the field. He's going to clearly be the favorite. That has not happened. That means that is a miss from what they expected. Again, Trubisky, if to Greg's point, he's fighting, he's doing those things. Maybe he does have a different trade. But when you talk about what he can do with his feet and what he offers this football team, if it's equal, he's got to be your guy.
All right, we'll wait and see what they wind up doing there. Again, now the coach says he will announce the starting quarterback before the game against the Lions. So perhaps as soon as